Senator Murphy just told DHS Secretary Kristi Noem that her department is out of control and the consequences could be catastrophic. From illegal spending to ignoring asylum laws, the human and national stakes are enormous. You need to hear what she's doing and why it matters.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Secretary, thank you for being here. I'm sorry that I missed your call yesterday. I look forward to working closely with you. I say this with seriousness and respect, but your department is out of control. You are spending like you don't have a budget. You're on the verge of running out of money for the fiscal year. You are illegally refusing to spend funds that have been authorized by this Congress and appropriated by this committee. You are ignoring the immigration laws of this nation, implementing a brand new immigration system that you have invented that has little relation to the statutes that you are required, that you are commanded to follow, as spelled out in your oath of office. You are routinely violating the rights of immigrants who may not be citizens, but whether you like it or not, they have constitutional and statutory rights when they reside in the United States. Your agency acts as if laws don't matter, as if the election gave you some mandate to violate the Constitution and the laws passed by this Congress. It did not give you that mandate. You act as if your disagreement with the law, or even the public's disagreement with the law, is relevant and gives you the ability to create your own law. It does not give you that ability. Let's start with your spending. You are on track to trigger the Anti-Deficiency Act. That means you are going to spend more money than you have been allocated by Congress. This is a rare occurrence, and it is wildly illegal. Your agency will be broke by July, over 2 months before the end of the fiscal year. You may not think that Congress has provided enough money to ICE, but the Constitution and the federal law does not allow you to spend more money than you have been given or to invent money. And this obsession with spending at the border, as the chairwoman mentioned, has left the country unprotected elsewhere. The security threats to the United States are higher, not lower, than when Trump came to office. To fund the border, you have illegally gutted spending for cybersecurity. As we speak, Russian and Chinese hackers are having a field day attacking our nation. You've withdrawn funds for disaster prevention. Storms are going to kill more people in this country because of your illegal withholding of these funds. Your myopia about the border, fueled by President Trump's prejudice against people who speak a different language, has shattered many of this country's most important defenses. Now let's talk about the impoundments. When Congress appropriates funds for a specific purpose, the administration has no discretion as to whether to spend or not spend that money unless you go through a very specific process with this committee. Let me give you two of many instances of this illegal impoundment. The first is the Shelter and Services Program. Senator Britt may want to zero that account out, but that account is funded, and it was funded in a bipartisan way. You don't like the program. Your policy is to treat migrants badly. I think that's abhorrent, but it doesn't matter that you don't like the program. You cannot cancel spending in this program, and you cannot use the funds as you have to fund other things, like ICE. You have also canceled citizenship and integration grants, which help lawful permanent residents become citizens, helping them take the citizenship test. I know your goal is to try to make life as hard as possible for immigrants, but that goal is not broadly shared by the American public. That's why Congress, in a bipartisan way, for decades, has funded this program to help immigrants in this country become citizens. Now let's talk about why encounters at the southern border are down so much. This is clearly going to be your primary talking point today. You will tell us that it represents a success. But the primary reason why encounters are down is because you are brazenly violating the law every hour of every day. You are refusing to allow people showing up at the southern border to apply for asylum. I acknowledge that you don't believe that people should be able to apply for asylum, but you don't get to choose that. The White House doesn't get to choose that. The law requires you to process people who are showing up at the border and who claim asylum. Why? Because our asylum law is a bipartisan commitment, an effort to correct for our nation's unconscionable decision to deny entry to Jews to this country who were being hunted and killed by the Nazis. Our nation, Republicans and Democrats, decided, wrote it into law, that we would not repeat that horror ever again, and thus we would allow for people who were fleeing terror and torture to come here, arrive at the border, and make a case for asylum. Finally, let's talk about these disappearances. In an autocratic society, people who the regime does not like are people who are protesting the regime. They are just often picked up off the street, spirited away, sometimes to open-ended detention, sometimes they're never seen again. What you are doing, both the individuals who have legal rights to stay here, like Kilmar Abrego Garcia, or students who are just protesting Trump's policies, is immoral. And to follow the theme, it is illegal. You have no right to deport a student visa holder with no due process, simply because they have spoken in a way that offends the president. You can't remove migrants who a court has given humanitarian protection from removal. Now, reports suggest that you are planning to remove immigrants with no due process and send them to prisons in Libya. Libya is in the middle of a civil war. It is subject to a level 4 travel advisory, meaning we tell American citizens never to travel to Libya. We don't have an embassy there because it is not safe for our diplomats. Sending migrants with pending asylum claims into a war zone just because it's cruel is so deeply disturbing. Listen, I understand that my Republican colleagues on this committee don't view the policy the way that I do. My Republican colleagues don't share my level of concern for the way that this administration treats immigrants. That's fine. But what I don't understand is why we don't have consensus in the Senate and on this committee on the decision by this administration to impound the spending that we have decided together to allocate in defense of this nation. We as an appropriations committee, we work interminable hours to write and pass a budget. This budget is really hard to write and pass. And so we make ourselves irrelevant when we allow the administration to ignore what we have decided. And then when we look the other way, when the administration rounds up immigrants who are here illegally and have committed no offenses worthy of detainment, we also do potential irreversible damage to the Constitution. These should not be partisan concerns, destroying the power of Congress, eroding individuals' constitutional rights. This should matter to both parties. Madam Secretary, thank you for being here, and I look forward to your testimony.
Today, Senator Chris Murphy held Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem to account in a way that goes beyond politics. It was a direct confrontation about law, responsibility, and the very purpose of government. This isn't just a hearing, it's a vivid demonstration of what happens when the power of a federal agency is exercised without restraint, oversight, or regard for the law. Murphy's message was clear. When the government operates as if laws and appropriations don't matter, real people pay the price, and democracy itself is weakened. From the outset, Murphy didn't mince words. He declared that Noem's department is out of control. That statement isn't a throwaway line, it's a condemnation of multiple, interlocking failures. Spending beyond appropriations, ignoring Congress, and reassigning funds from critical programs to suit political priorities is not just bureaucratic carelessness, it's illegal under the Anti-Deficiency Act. Murphy emphasized that DHS is on track to run out of money months before the fiscal year ends. Think about that. An agency tasked with national security, disaster preparedness, and public safety could hit a financial brick wall, not because Congress failed to fund it, but because it refused to operate within the law. That's a structural failure with human consequences. Murphy connected these budgetary concerns to real-world dangers. Diverting funds from cybersecurity, disaster mitigation, and other national defense priorities doesn't just show fiscal recklessness, it invites catastrophic outcomes. Russian and Chinese hackers aren't waiting politely while the U.S. sorts out its budget. Storms and natural disasters won't pause because DHS failed to allocate resources appropriately. By prioritizing border operations above all else, especially through policies driven by political ideology rather than law, the agency is endangering Americans on multiple fronts. Then Murphy took the conversation to the heart of the human cost. He described immigrants being denied their legal rights, showing that these aren't abstract policy points, they are human beings whose lives, safety, and dignity are at stake. Refusing asylum seekers, ignoring court-mandated protections, and planning to deport vulnerable individuals to conflict zones like Libya is more than bureaucratic mismanagement, it is morally indefensible and legally precarious. These actions contravene both statutory and constitutional rights, yet Murphy highlighted how they are being implemented as if laws and treaties are mere suggestions. What makes Murphy's remarks especially powerful is the historical context he brings in. Asylum laws were created as a bipartisan moral commitment, a response to the horrors of the Holocaust. They were deliberately designed to ensure that the United States would not repeat past mistakes by denying protection to people fleeing persecution. By refusing entry to those seeking safety, Murphy reminds us Noem's DHS is ignoring a core ethical and legal responsibility that stretches back decades. This is not partisan rhetoric, it is about the integrity of U.S. law and the moral compass of a nation. Murphy also exposed the tension between political loyalty and constitutional duty. Noem's policies, fueled by partisan priorities and personal ideology, reflect an agency acting above the law. Murphy repeatedly pointed out that ignoring Congress, circumventing appropriations, and denying due process isn't a matter of policy disagreement, it's a violation of the oath sworn by public officials to uphold the Constitution. These are structural problems, showing how the erosion of accountability in one department can ripple across government and affect every American. For viewers, this isn't just a lesson in policy, it's an education in civic literacy. It illustrates the essential function of congressional oversight, ensuring that the executive branch, no matter how powerful, follows the law. Murphy's interrogation of Noem highlights why appropriations matter, why due process exists, and why human rights are inseparable from legal compliance. It's a reminder that every law, every budget, and every policy decision has consequences far beyond the pages of legislation. They affect real lives, national security, and the very legitimacy of democratic governance. The takeaway is clear. Unchecked power invites abuse. Ignoring the law to serve ideology undermines not only vulnerable communities, but the foundational principles of this nation. Murphy's insistence that Congress and the executive branch remain bound by law is not just political theater. It is a defense of democracy itself. Murphy also exposed the tension between political loyalty and constitutional duty. Noem's policies, fueled by partisan priorities and personal ideology, reflect an agency acting above the law. Murphy repeatedly pointed out that ignoring Congress, circumventing appropriations, and denying due process isn't a matter of policy disagreement, it's a violation of the oath sworn by public officials to uphold the Constitution. These are structural problems, showing how the erosion of accountability in one department can ripple across government and affect every American. For viewers, this isn't just a lesson in policy, it's an education in civic literacy. It illustrates the essential function of congressional oversight, ensuring that the executive branch, no matter how powerful, follows the law. Murphy's interrogation of Noem highlights why appropriations matter, why due process exists, and why human rights are inseparable from legal compliance. It's a reminder that every law, every budget, and every policy decision has consequences far beyond the pages of legislation. They affect real lives, national security, and the very legitimacy of democratic governance. The takeaway is clear. Unchecked power invites abuse. Ignoring the law to serve ideology undermines not only vulnerable communities, but the foundational principles of this nation. Murphy's insistence that Congress and the executive branch remain bound by law is not just political theater, it is a defense of democracy itself. Understanding this exchange gives viewers the tools to see beyond the headlines. It's about the Constitution in action, the limits of federal authority, and the tangible consequences when government fails to respect its own rules. These moments remind us why civic knowledge matters. It empowers citizens to hold officials accountable, to demand transparency, and to insist that laws protect everyone, not just the politically expedient few. If you want more analysis that digs beneath the surface, breaking down the legal, ethical, and human stakes of congressional oversight, make sure to like and subscribe to Left Lens. Every week, we bring you the context, history, and humanity behind the headlines, because understanding power isn't optional, it's essential.